7 spine-chilling farm horrors revealed, sinister secrets of the cursed and haunted rural life. The summer sun beat down like an unrelenting furnace as Jake Thompson stepped out of the farmhouse, the air thick with unease. Failing crops, restless livestock. His family farm in Indiana felt more like a prison than a home. As if the land itself was cursed, shadows stretched ominously across the fields, whispering secrets of despair. With each step, dread clung to him, tightening like a noose. Inside the barn, the cows grazed at all hours, chewing their feed with unsettling rhythm. They'd never done that before. At night, deep moans echoed, unsettling Jake to his core. Was it the cows, or something more sinister lurking in the dark? The farm, once a proud testament to his family's heritage, had become a vessel of nightmares. Tonight, he climbed into the attic, hoping to uncover a vestige of hope amid the cobwebs and rotting wood. He dusted off a frayed family journal, its yellowed pages revealing tales of their ancestors' bond with the land. As he flipped through the brittle leaves, unsettling stories emerged, from whispered legends of Old Man Collins, the reclusive neighbor, to dark family secrets that loomed larger than the corn stalks swaying outside. The stories chilled his heart, weaving a pattern of dread through his thoughts. Why was this land considered haunted? What unfathomable legacy tied them to it? Just as he closed the journal, shadows flickered beyond the fields, sending an icy grip down his spine. Was that just the wind, or something watching? The very air grew heavy, and Jake's heart raced. How had it come to this? How had he let despair cloud his judgment? Yet, it felt too real to be mere imagination. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days passed, but the sinister disturbances only escalated. The sun vanished too soon, swallowed by an oppressive darkness. Shadows danced at the corners of Jake's vision, and Emily, his teenage daughter, began talking about dreams filled with eyes lurking in the night. Lisa, frightened and desperate, suggested they leave the cursed farm. But Jake felt tethered. The land was ancestral, even if it felt like a prison. Storm clouds gathered on that fateful evening, electrifying the air. While thunder rolled ominously, Jake's curiosity turned into dread-driven obsession. He crept toward Collins's property, heart pounding as lightning revealed the horrifying sight. Old Man Collins stood over a crude altar made of twisted branches, surrounded by the bones of livestock, murmuring dark prayers into the storm. Jake's breath hitched. Was the old man a harbinger of their family's doom? Panic surged through him, his protective instincts awakening. The moment stretched, and his heartbeat thundered in his ears. What secrets were buried in this land? Were his family's lives entwined with a darker fate than he ever imagined? As Old Man Collins's eyes flicked toward him, the true horror loomed larger than he could ever fathom. Would he be able to shield his family from the blood-soaked legacy that threatened to consume them all? The rain fell in sheets, drowning the fields and transforming the farm into a dark abyss. Jake stumbled back from Collins's property, fear bubbling in his chest. He felt exposed, as if the storm itself had awakened dark forces. The night was raw and charged, an electric current of dread coursing through his veins. He rushed through the barn doors, slamming them shut behind him. The low, mournful sounds of the cows multiplied in the dark, their eyes glistening with an otherworldly glow. Did they sense the terror? Could they perceive the impending doom? As he walked past them, their heavy breaths echoed like an ominous chant. Panic rose, choking him. What if they knew? What if they were part of some malevolent pact? Jake? Emily's voice trembled from the darkness. Where were you? I had the dream again. He turned, eyes wide. What dream? Her voice shook as she whispered. The eyes, Dad. They're watching. They won't let us go. A shudder ran through Jake. He needed to reassure her, to wipe away her fears, but how could he when his own heart raced with dread? He drew Emily close. It's just a dream, Em. Just a figment of your mind. But he saw it, the crack of despair forming in her eyes, mirroring the breaking of storm clouds overhead. The wind howled against the barn, as if the night itself howled in agreement. Hours stretched into an eternity. Jake paced the shadows, and Lisa joined them, wearing a face like pale parchment. I can't take this anymore, she said, her voice cracking. We need to leave. Now. No. We can't. It burst out of him, raw and desperate. This is our land. Our family's land. Despair hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Emily and Lisa exchanged fearful glances. What if Collins knows something we don't? Lisa's voice was barely above a whisper. Jake's mind raced with possibilities, dread creeping deeper into his bones. Old man Collins had to be stopped. There had been something unholy about that crude altar, something that called to their blood, their history grounding them to the very soil beneath their feet. Without thinking, he grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The storm hadn't abated, and the wind whipped around him, chilling him to the core. He strained to see through the sheets of rain, pushing toward the edge of the property where darkness mingled with the shadows of the trees. As he approached, he found himself retracing his own steps toward Collins' altar. The air was electric with unseen energy, as if the world was caught in a horrific balance. Then, he heard something, a low, rhythmic chanting that made his blood run cold. Peering through the dense shielding of shadows, he saw Collins, more monstrous under the flickering light. The old man had called forth something dark, the ground around him pulsating with a life of its own. Bones shifted and rattled, lifting slightly from the earth, as if recognizing a rebirth in the storm's chaos. Jake's stomach dropped. There, etched in the dirt, were the names of his ancestors, each name a weight hanging in the air, each day in the earth a testament to years of blood and toil. Was Collins bent on conjuring their spirits for a fate more horrific than he could imagine? Just then, a deafening crack of thunder split the sky, and the chanting ceased. Jake felt a chill creep down his spine as he locked eyes with Collins, an unholy connection like a bolt of lightning zapping through the darkness. The sense of impending doom closed in like the oppressive atmosphere thickening around him. What had started as a battle for survival was spiraling toward a confrontation loaded with blood-soaked legacies. Jake backed away, heart racing. The monster had revealed himself, but he had to find a way to save his family before they were engulfed by the darkness festering in their ancestral ground. But even as he turned to flee, a sense of unease coiled in his gut. Collins was not just summoning spirits, he was preparing for something far worse. What would happen when dawn finally broke, and the shadow of their legacy emerged in daylight? Jake stumbled back into the barn, gasping for breath. The flashlight shook in his hand, flickering ominously, illuminating the anxious faces of Emily and Lisa. They stood in a corner, drawn together like moths to a flickering flame, each pulse of light casting shadows that danced sinisterly across the walls. He sees us. Emily's whisper pierced through the suffocating air. He knows. Jake could feel the weight of her fear pushing down on him. It wasn't just a boy's nightmare anymore, it was tangible. Fear had morphed into something more malignant. No, he breathed. We need to stay calm. But his own racing heart betrayed him. Outside, the storm raged on, thunder rumbling like a monster awakened from deep slumber. Another crack split the sky, brighter than before. For a brief moment, the barn bathed in white light, revealing dark stains on the floor, blood-like streaks that sent his stomach churning. Had he been so ignorant of the horror festering around him? Lisa clutched her arms, her voice wavering. What do we do, Jake? We can't just sit here. I need to figure out how deep this goes, he said, stroking Emily's hair. It felt like a bad idea to keep their gaze on the door behind him, knowing Collins lingered with his unnatural power just outside. A whisper of wind slithered through the cracks in the barn, whispering secrets. What had Collins done? with resolve, Jake turned to face them. "I'll go back. I have to confront him. This ends tonight or there won't be a dawn for any of us." "Jake!" Emily's hand shot out, grabbing his arm in desperation. "Please don't. He'll hurt you." Fear radiated from her wide eyes, the pleading in her voice felt like barbed wire, but he had no choice. They were running out of time. Collins was circling them like a vulture, preparing for the feast of despair. The thought churned his insides, but he steadied his resolve. "Stay here." He stepped towards the exit, heart pounding with each footfall, anticipation tightening in his chest. The low chant began to creep back into the night, drawing him in. He hesitated, then whispered, "I will protect you. I promise." The barn doors creaked as he pushed them open, the dreary slate sky mingling with heavy clouds. As he ventured onto the muddy ground, the rain fell harder, drenching him instantly, seeping through his clothes like cold fingers grasping at his skin. Every step was a fight against the storm and his own thoughts. The shadows stretched ominously, as if they were arms reaching toward him. Just then, the air thickened, an edge of malevolence sharp enough to cut through flesh. "Jake," a voice rasped from just behind him, and he froze. A chill enveloped him, and he turned slowly to find Collins standing yards away. The old man's face twisted into a grotesque grin, eyes glinting with otherworldly knowledge. "You really ought to turn around. What do you want?" Jake shouted, anger rising in his throat. "Leave my family alone." Collins stepped closer, the ground beneath his feet squelching with a sickening sound. "Leave? Oh no, you don't understand. You're bound here, Jake. Your bloodline doesn't let you walk away." In that instant, Jake understood. The furious wind howled, revealing the whispers of lost souls caught in the storm. A shrine to the past, drenched in the rain and despair. "Your ancestors welcome their return," Collins continued, voice rising in feverish excitement. "Legacy isn't just history, it's a cycle." Jake stumbled back, sickened, but he felt an unnatural compulsion to move closer, to delve into the depths of cursed traditions braided into his lineage. Could they resist? As the chanting grew louder, drowning out even the storm, a haunting image manifested behind Collins, a ghostly figure of a woman, her face twisted in agony, eyes pleading for release. "Join us or be consumed." Collins' words pierced through the air, and Jake found himself in a whirlpool of conflicting emotions, too scared to act yet too drawn to do nothing. Suddenly, the rain intensified, turning into a torrential downpour, drenching both men. The altar of despair pulsed with dark energy. Beneath his feet, feeding off their dread, and within him, fear surged into a boiling point. If he didn't act now, it might be too late for everyone. With a sudden surge of courage, Jake shouted, "No. I refuse to be part of this madness." But the ground lurched beneath him, an all-consuming darkness yawned open, threatening to swallow him whole. And just before he could react, he realized with horror that the figures surrounding him were not just shadows, each carried the weight of his ancestry, rising, restless and unyielding. Would he confront the truth or fall into the curse bound to his blood? As the storm raged on and the figures advanced, Jake's heart raced. The true darkness was about to reveal itself. Jake's breath hitched as the shadows loomed closer, the ghostly figures shifting and swirling like smoke in the fierce wind. A twinge of recognition flickered in his mind. Each face merged from the shadows carried features echoing his own, twisted in suffering, eyes wide with a cry that went unheard. "Jake, come to us!" the chilling whispers harmonized, a cruel invitation ringing in his ears. He staggered back, the ground quaking beneath him as he clutched his pounding heart. "We are family, we have waited for you, know." He swallowed hard, the taste of rain mixing with bile rising in his throat. He remembered the warning spoken in hushed tones around the dinner table, stories about ancestors who were lost to the shadows, echoing through time as reminders of a forgotten pact. Had it all been true? The storm roared, lightning illuminating the faces of those tortured souls. Their memories clawed at him, pulling him into a vortex of despair. Each bolt struck like a hammer, answering his fears with cruel clarity. The barrier between him and the figures thinned, overwhelming him with dread, as if the very ground wanted to swallow him whole. "Join us!" Collins' voice, haunting and rich with malevolence, echoed through the chaos. He stood at the center, gloating in the storm like a maestro commanding an unholy symphony. "This is your destiny. The legacy of your blood. I will not." Jake fought against the rising tide of despair. "You can't control me." His words felt feeble, wavering against the cacophony around him. He wished desperately for Emily and Lisa, for their safety and strength. As if summoned by his thoughts, a breeze tousled his hair, carrying a familiar scent, the warmth of home, entwined with their laughter, washing over him like a cleansing wave. "Fight, Jake. We believe in you." A voice slipped through the storm, vague yet distinct. It drove the relentless shadows back a mere inch. Was it Emily? But Collins waved a hand, sending a pulse of darkness that crashed against Jake with force. "Do you think they can save you? You are all alone." His voice, a growl, sent a jolt of ice down Jake's spine. "Am I?" Jake shouted, defiance igniting deep within. He grasped onto that fleeting image of his family. Maybe he wasn't as alone as Collins wanted him to believe. With every ounce of will, he stepped forward, pushing through the swell of figures surrounding him. Desperation made him brave, and courage, a weapon. "You will not take me. I break this cycle." The shadows writhed and recoiled, almost as if they were bound by invisible chains. Collins's eyes flashed with fury, recognition dawning. "You think you can defy your ancestry?" "Yes." Jake screamed, finding strength he didn't know he had as the storm crackled with energy. "I choose my own path." Suddenly, dark tendrils lashed toward him, grasping at his limbs like icy fingers. Shadows clawed through the air, clutching and pulling, seeking to drag him into their eternal night. The dark energy around him throbbed, feeding off his fear, spurring him to surrender, but just as the shadows leapt toward his throat, Jake felt warmth envelop him. The fleeting memory of Emily's touch surged through his heart like a shield, grounding him against the storm. The essence of that connection unleashed something deep inside. A brilliant light filled the air, expelling darkness like a purifying flame, sending the figures screeching back. Jake pressed on, calling out, "You're not my heritage. You're a curse." As the last word escaped his lips, Collins's face morphed into an expression of sheer rage. The storm rumbled, the sky split, as if the heavens themselves acknowledged his stand. A violent wind swept through, lifting him, spinning him into a spiral of blinding clarity. Could this be the moment he broke free? Or would the call of his lineage pull him back into the abyss? In that flickering moment, when everything felt possible, the ground trembled violently, reality bending, and Jake found himself hurtling through a memory lost but not forgotten, fueling a conflict where both the past and the present collided. And then, in a flash of blinding light, he vanished. Where would he land, and what truth awaited him? Jake landed hard, the impact jarring him awake as if from a restless sleep. He rolled onto cold, damp earth, the sharp scent of decay filling his nostrils. The air felt thick, stale and oppressive, heavier than the storm. Instinctively, he pushed himself up, bracing against the chill that pierced his skin. Around him, a desolate landscape unfurled. Broken fences and twisted trees stood like sentinels against a pale, bruised sky. The remnants of an old farmhouse crumbled in the distance, the roof sagging like a weary beast, half buried in tall, menacing grasses. His heart raced, each beat echoing in the eerie quiet. Where had he landed? The familiar feeling of dread coiled tight in his stomach. "Jake!" The voice sliced through the silence, unmistakable yet distant. It was Emily. Or was it merely his imagination? He strained to hear, clutching at fading echoes that danced around him. Emily? Panic rose up his throat, almost choking him. He stumbled forward, adrenaline pushing him against fatigue. The emptiness felt suffocating, pressing down hard, demanding he succumb to despair. Emily. Lisa. He called again, louder this time, his voice cracking like dry twigs underfoot. The landscape was still. Too still. Not a single creature stirred, nor did the wind whisper through the trees. Just like before, like the shadows that chased him. Just silence. A rumble broke through, deeper, more guttural than thunder. It came from the decaying farmhouse, pulsating with malicious intent. Drawn against his will, he edged closer. Shadows flickered around the broken doorway, dark figures draped in tatters, lurking just out of sight. Come, they beckoned, the chilling allure twisting around his heart. Come to us, dear Jake. No, no. He shouted back at the shadows. You can't have me. Cracks of fear quivered at the edges of his voice. In that moment, Jake felt a ghostly wind whip around him, colder than anything he had experienced. It swept through the remnants of the farmhouse, howling in mockery. He hesitated, caught between running and the need to push on. Fight for them, for Emily and Lisa. The words echoed inside his head, urging him to break free from whatever trap this place held. He wouldn't let shadowy allure drown him. Not now. With steely resolve, he stepped over the threshold. The darkness sucked at him like quicksand, teasing, taunting. The room beyond was a relic frozen in time, furniture draped in dusty sheets, frames missing their photographs. Something glinted in the corner, a small, silver mirror, untouched by decay. As he neared, he felt an oppressive weight welling up inside him, an ache that lingered deep within his bones. The mirror reflected not just his visage, but whispering shadows of his past, flickering memories of laughter and joy overshadowed by the sorrowful figures of family, forever lost to darkness. Jake recoiled. No. I won't let you use me. His heart thundered as he stepped back, crashing against the furniture. The aged wood groaned under the weight of his fear. The world around him twisted ominously, shadows beginning to close in. Collins' voice seeped through, a deep snarl. You think you can escape? You are bound by blood then. As if commanded by his very thought, the mirror's surface shimmered, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. Just behind it, figures began to coalesce, faces, distorted yet familiar, ancestors lost to the very shadows he sought to defy. Jake, you must join us, they echoed, a simultaneous plea, eyes hollow but yearning. A pulse of raw panic shot through him. No. He thrashed against it, his reflection shattering as if a dam had broken. Glass flew like shards of his own soul, slicing through the blackness encroaching him. As the world around him buckled and twisted, the shadows howled a lament, echoing with rage and despair. The air thickened, the room warping out of existence, and Jake felt his spirit unravel. Then suddenly, he was falling again, falling into another memory, a promise made long ago. The darkness reached for him, but there was a flicker of something brighter at the corner of his heart. A glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. Would he land where he belonged or descend into eternal shadow? Each breath felt like a battle. The fight was far from over. What awaited him on the other side of this darkness? He landed hard again, this time not on soil, but on a wooden floor slick with an unidentifiable substance that sent a jolt of revulsion through him. Jake scrambled to get up, his hands coated in something warm and thick. It was dark, and the air felt heavy with the stench of rot. Where was he now? Was he still in the farmhouse? The memory of the mirror lingered, echoing shrieks and hollow pleas. He turned, gazing around at the dimly lit chamber, realizing it was different. Crumbling walls dripped with dampness and shadows writhed in the corners as if alive and waiting. It felt like a dungeon, with stone walls too close for comfort, and an unsettling chill slipped beneath his skin. Jake helped the voice again, weaker this time, calling from somewhere deeper in the shadows. His gut twisted. It was Emily. Emily! He shouted, straining to identify the source. He took a step forward, heart pounding, echoing against the walls. Each step fought against the creeping dread that tightened around him, paralyzing his resolve. Jake spotted a flickering light beyond a maze of tar-stained boards and debris. He pushed forward, desperate and reckless. As he neared, the flickering illuminated a set of stairs that spiraled downward, fading into darkness. The voice grew clearer. A vision of Emily, her face pale and her eyes wide with terror, materialized in his mind. He couldn't let her languish in despair. Without a second thought, he started down the staircase. Each creaking step groaned underfoot, as if warning him to turn back. The flickering light ahead dimmed, swallowed by a yawning blackness that hung ominously. He felt a pang of doubt. What if he was only walking deeper into the trap? But still, he pressed on. As he descended, the air shifted. It was colder, almost numbing. A whisper slithered past his ear, "Join us." It was different now, hungry and sinister. Shadows slithered up the steps, reaching for him, wanting to pull him back into the cold embrace of despair. Jake's breath quickened. "No!" he spat, shaking his head vehemently. He pushed himself faster, setting his feet against the urge to retreat, drawn instead towards the wavering light that flickered like a dying hope. At the bottom, Jake emerged into a cavernous room lit by walls smeared bright red, as if splattered with blood. Horror pooled in his stomach as he realized it was not just paint, but life. The light emanated from the center, a small clearing with a table, crudely constructed and laid out with items he couldn't quite comprehend: bones, tattered clothing, a shriveled doll missing an eye. Each object carried whispers, entangled with memories of abandonment and fear. At the edge of the table stood figures, shadows of twisted shapes, their eyes hollow and expectant. "You see, darling, we've been waiting for you," they crooned, their voices syrupy and sinister. The overwhelming urge to flee gripped him. Jake stepped back, panic shooting through him. "I don't belong here." His pulse drummed in his ears. As the figures advanced towards him, the air grew thicker, more suffocating. Behind him, the steps above began to close off, sealing him in this grotesque sanctuary. No escape. Suddenly, with a flash, the images of the people he loved flooded his thoughts: Emily, Lisa, their laughter a distant echo. It pierced the darkness, igniting a fire deep within him. He would not be taken. With one last defiant scream, he surged forward, smashing into the cursed figurines. They disintegrated into darkness, shattering against a wall of malevolence. But more shadows surged in to take their place, multiplying, blocking his path. Every breath felt like a gasp from a drowning man. "Emily!" he screamed again, desperation fueling his adrenaline. And just then, a blinding light flared from the far corner. It wasn't flickering, it was stable and warm, calling him like a beacon. But he had no idea what lay beyond. Would it be salvation, or another trap? As the darkness wove tighter, Jake felt his choices narrowing. Would he run towards the light, or cower from the shadows? He lunged forward, uncertainty gnawed at his insides. What awaited him on the other side of that blinding glow? Jake burst through the radiance, feeling a wave of warmth wash over him, shaking off the chill of the shadows. The moment his feet hit the ground, he stumbled onto blades of grass, soft and cool beneath him. He blinked against the brightness, visions of darkness fading in the blur. But as his vision cleared, unease settled back into his gut. This was not a safe haven. The light flickered, casting long shadows that danced hungrily around him. The cold wasn't gone. It lingered, just out of reach, like an unseen specter waiting in the wings. Emily's voice was barely a whisper, and he felt the breath evaporate from his lungs. "Emily!" he called, spinning in circles, searching for her. Amidst the towering trees that surrounded him, patchy sunlight filtered through the leaves like the gaze of 1,000 eyes, each one watching, judging. "Over here." The voice sounded again, slightly stronger, a thread of hope woven through the thickening haze. He followed the call, heart racing. The trees loomed higher and thicker with each step, dense and suffocating. The ground felt spongy, sticky like the floor from before, but he ignored the creeping sensation that whatever lay beneath was waiting to pull him under there. Between the twisted roots and dark undergrowth, the outline of a figure emerged, pale and shaky. It was Emily. He recognized her instantly. She stood there, disoriented and trembling, her hands clutching at her sides. "Jake," she sobbed, eyes wide with fear. "You came. I thought, don't worry, I'm here. We need to get out." He reached for her, grasping her wrist, but as he did, an icy wind swept through the trees, rustling the leaves into a furious whisper. The friendly light flickered ominously, shadows stretched longer, as if alive, grasping for them. "Jake, wait." Emily gripped his arm, her nails digging into his skin. "It's not safe here. We have to go back." "Back? Back where?" Panic surged in his veins like electricity. "I can't go back. They wanted to take us." "No. This place wants more than just us. You don't understand." Her voice trembled. "We've been chosen." The words crashed over him like a wave of icy water. Chosen for what? The air felt charged with danger, filled with an almost tangible malice. An unsettling realization began to dawn. The shadows weren't just lingering anymore, they were pressing closer. "Let us just move." He pulled Emily along, leading her deeper into the forest. Each stride became desperate as they weaved through the trees. But the forest's grip tightened around them. They were not just running through woods but deeper into a living nightmare. From behind, whispers surged like a rising tide, drowning out his thoughts. "Join us, join us." The voices echoed off the trees, mocking and alluring. Each syllable wrapped around him, dragging at his resolve. Ahead, a clearing opened up. But just as they reached the threshold, the sky darkened, and the branches above twisted and curled as if trying to conceal something horrific within. Emily paused, heartsick, her eyes wide and fixed on the stark blackness that loomed just beyond. "Do we have to go?" she asked, fear tangling her voice. Jake looked into her eyes, a reflection of terror and determination. It mirrored his own turmoil. "It could be an exit. A chance. We can't stay here." But behind them, the shadows swelled, pulsing like a dark heartbeat, hungry and relentless. "Jake," they called her name, the sound slippery and treacherous, a lure that promised comfort and safety but struck fear into his heart. "Run." He gripped her tighter and sprinted toward the darkness. Just steps away from entering the unknown, a figure emerged. Cloaked in shadow, it stepped forward, a shape both familiar and twisted. Emily gasped, her other hand clasping her mouth. A guttural voice emerged from the obscurity. "You shouldn't have come back." Jake's heart raced, locking up with raw terror. Just as he braced for a confrontation, a chilling thought pierced through him. What if the real horror was not the shadows but the truth hidden in the light? What awaited them in the depths of that shadowy embrace? Jake stumbled back as the familiar figure stepped into the dim light, the horrifying mix of recognition and disbelief coursing through him. It was his brother, Matt, except it wasn't completely Matt. The face was the same, but the eyes glimmered with an unnatural sheen, dull and lifeless like the surface of an abandoned well. "Matt?" Jake's voice cracked, fear gripping him tighter than ever. "What happened to you?" "It's not what happened to me," Matt said, his voice eerily calm, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling around. "It's what can happen to you. You see, we're waiting for you to understand." Emily's grip on Jake tightened, her knuckles white against his skin. "We shouldn't listen to him, Jake. We have to get away." "No, Emily. You have to listen to him," Matt replied, a sickening smile creeping across his lips. "Everything whispers here. The trees, the shadows, they've been hungry for you for so long. You were meant to find your way back." "Shut up!" Jake shouted, pushing Emily behind him. "You're not my brother. You can't be. You're a monster." The air thickened, carrying the faint scent of decay. With every word Matt spoke, the shadows seemed to flicker in anticipation, swirling with malicious glee. Jake felt his heart pounding fiercely against his chest, sweat trickling down his back. Only some of us are chosen for the truth, Matt continued, stepping closer, his voice laced with a chilling serenade. You can join us, Jake. Submit to the shadows, and you'll be free. Choose light, and you'll never leave this forest. No. Emily cried out. Don't listen to him, Jake. Remember the stories, the things that happened here. People don't just disappear. It's not disappearing, Matt hissed. It's transcending. This place transforms you, reveals your true self. You'll see autumn leaves dancing, hear laughter beneath the trees. We'll all be together. Jake felt the warmth leave his body as those nightmarish words echoed in the depths of his mind. The shadows behind Matt pulsed, rippling like a living veil, inviting and repulsive at the same time. What if it's true, Jay? Emily whispered, fear lacing her voice with trembling uncertainty. What if we've been wrong? He shook his head frantically, forcing himself to focus on the present. No. We can't trust him. Trust that thing. He started to back away, pulling Emily along, but Matt's laughter stopped him dead in his tracks. Do you think you can escape? You left once, but this forest has a way of reclaiming its own. The shadows writhed, and suddenly the trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers. Emily's eyes glimmered with unshed tears, her resolve cracking under pressure. What if we're meant to be here? No. We're not. He shouted, heart hammering with urgency. But doubt seeped into his mind, like the grip of the shadows at his feet. A thundering roar erupted from behind, rattling the air as monstrous shapes slid from the darkness. The shadows weren't just expressions anymore, they had taken form. Jake's throat constricted with panic as more figures unfurled, grotesque and lost, remnants of the forest's cruel taint. Jake! Matt's voice morphed into something sinister, warped by the shadows. Come back. You belong with us. That's when he saw it, a flicker of light in the distance, fiercely radiant and pulsing against the encroaching dark. It was a chance, a path back to hope, but could he trust it? Run, Jake. Don't look back. Emily yelled, and her determination reignited something inside him. But as they turned, something wrapped around his leg, dragging him back into the suffocating embrace of the woods. The shadows swirled, their laughter echoing, feeding on his fear. They weren't just shadows, they were the harbingers of a truth Jake had to face. Was he chosen for darkness after all? With a surge of adrenaline, he fought against the grip, wrenching free of the terror, and sprinted towards the light. But could they break free before the shadows swallowed them whole? What lay in the light that awaited them? Would it be a refuge or another nightmare? The moment Jake felt the pull relent, he didn't hesitate. He and Emily raced toward the flickering light, its warmth a promise of safety against the cold that seeped into their bones. Shadows shrieked and thrashed behind them, a cacophony of twisted voices urging Jake to turn back. Just a little further. He gasped, adrenaline surging. He grasped Emily's hand tightly, her fingers cold and trembling. She looked back, her face pale, eyes wide with fear that mirrored his own. What if it's a trap? She managed to whisper, her voice shaking against the howling wind that whipped around them. Jake didn't answer. He couldn't afford to think, just run. Every heartbeat pushed him closer to the beckoning light that swayed like a beacon. It filled the air with an electric hum, drawing him in, promising escape from the wicked whispers and wrongness that suffocated the night. Then, the ground lurched beneath him, and sharp thorns clawed at his legs, pulling him down. He staggered, nearly losing his footing as he fought against the sudden onslaught of roots slithering like serpents around him. Jake! Emily screamed, trying to pull him back, but her frantic grip only sent shivers down his spine. We have to keep moving. He ripped his leg free with a savage twist, shooting her a frantic look. They couldn't die here. Not like this, the shadows morphed, swallowing Matt's face as he howled from the depths. You think you can escape? The forest knows your every step. Rage flared in Jake's chest. You're not my brother. He shouted into the dark, forcing his legs to move despite the numbing grip of despair clawing at his heart. You're nothing. Ahead, the light pulsed brighter, shimmering like a star caught in a web of night. They barreled onward, fear enveloping them like a suffocating shroud, the specters of the woods flinging themselves against an invisible wall. The more they ran, the angrier the shadows became, swirling and gnashing with lost fury, and then, just before reaching the light, Emily stumbled. She cried out, caught somewhere between despair and a dreadful allure that seemed to whisper her name. Jake lunged back, grabbing her wrist. Don't give in. It's a lie. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she struggled, fighting against the weight of shadows that seemed to coil around her like a fog thickening with dread. I can hear them, Jake. They promise hope, they promise us relief. What if? Stop. We're not supposed to be here. Jake's voice cracked, an echo of their brother's insidious words slicing through the air, urging them toward darkness. That flicker of light grew larger, and clarity surged through him. It was not an escape, it was a gauntlet. He knew they had to choose. A moment of brutal truth lay before them. Emily, we have to jump. He urged, sensing the urgency in her faltering spirit, but it wasn't just the shadows behind them. He felt it creep closer from the light, too. Shapes began to form around the radiance, grotesque silhouettes taking root. They were not true guardians of light, but twisted spawns of something darker, hungry for their surrender. Jake, look out! Emily screamed as a figure lunged through the light, a writhing mass of pale skin and sunken eyes, reaching for them with outstretched fingers that sizzled against the illumination. He yanked Emily to the side just as it brushed past, a powerful gust forcing them back, snatching breath and hope alike. Go! We have to fight. With no time to think, they squared off against the oncoming tide of haunted figures, eyes wide, mouths twisted into perverse interpretations of his brother's grin. They weren't gripping the essence of the forest anymore, they were carving their own path. Strength returned, bolstered by their shared pulse of defiance, but as they pressed toward the light with their remaining strength, Jake could feel it, the sickening truth gnawing at the edges of his mind. What if they weren't meant to leave? What if the shadows were right? A thunderous roar shook the ground beneath them, pulling the air from his lungs. The forest cried out, the shadows screamed louder, and the light seemed to dim for a fleeting instant, a cruel darkness lingering in the corner of his vision. Could they hold on to their humanity and find freedom, or were they destined to join the chorus of the lost? The moment hung suspended as figures surged forward, making the light flicker, battling against their last breath of hope. In the very next heartbeat, Jake realized the forest's true plan. There was only one way out, and it demanded a sacrifice. What were they willing to lose to finally escape the abyss? Jake stood there, heart pounding, swallowed by uncertainty. But as the shadows pressed forward, encircling them like trapped prey, he felt something shift within him. The weakness that had festered inside, the doubts that threatened to ensnare him, began to dissolve in the blaze of his purpose. He took a deep breath. Emily, he said, voice steady despite the tumult around them, we fight together. Emily nodded, fear giving way to a flicker of resolve. Together. With the shadows gnashing at their heels, they charged forward, fueled by the memory of their family, the laughter shared in better days. The light before them flickered again, larger and more inviting, a threshold to hope. The figures from the shadows lunged, voices echoing the torment of every lost soul, but this time Jake and Emily stood firm. As they collided with the darkness, a surge of energy erupted from the bond they shared. We won't let you take us. Jake screamed into the black. The distortion was palpable, it buzzed like a live wire, resonating deep within their very beings. Jake clasped Emily's hand, resolute. We have to break the cycle. As they surged into the light, they felt the pressure of shadows clawing at their skin, cold tendrils seeping into their very essence. Then, something miraculous happened. The light expanded, enveloping them in warmth that pulsed with life, pushing back against the darkness. It screamed, fighting to reclaim its grip on them, while Jake felt a sudden sense of clarity, love, strength, family. In that moment, the memories of their loved ones lost but not forgotten surged to the forefront. Their parents, their laughter, the warmth of home, each one a beacon that filled them with unchecked energy. It became a wave, building and crashing against the darkness. Join us, Jake. Emily. You're meant for this. The figure that looked like Matt snarled, but Jake noticed the uncertainty in its voice, rapid transitions flickering through its eyes. No. You're not my brother. Jake cried, stepping forward. You are a shadow of what he was. You will never take us. Not like this. With those words, the shadows writhed, howling as the light expanded further, forming a protective barrier around them. Jake and Emily pushed on, unyielding, spurred by strength and love against the forces that sought to claim them. The storm of darkness swirled around, threatening to consume, but every step they took toward the light pulled at the very fabric of despair that had held them captive. Jake felt Emily's grip tighten, her courage blending with his. Together they were an unstoppable force. Then that heart-stopping moment came. They burst through the shadows into the blinding brilliance of the light, and it was peaceful. As they crossed into that radiant world, Jake felt an incredible release. The shadows disintegrated against the illumination, shrieking in protest before fading entirely, absorbed into nothingness. Jake blinked harder, absorbing the reality that enveloped them. He was back on the familiar ground of their farm, but it was transformed. The fields glimmered, vibrantly green, alive with sunlight. Birds sang, and a sweet breeze flicked playfully against their skin. Is it over? Emily breathed, her eyes wide, scanning the glorious daylight. I think so, Jake replied, chest tightening with both fear and hope. And there, under the vast blue sky, they saw silhouettes approaching on the horizon. It was Lisa and their parents, smiles wide, arms outstretched, becoming more vivid as they drew near. Jake! Emily! Lisa cried, a mix of joy and relief spilling over as they closed the distance. Tears blurred Jake's vision, but not of sadness. This was a reunion he hadn't dared to dream of. We're home! Emily exclaimed, as their parents wrapped them in warm hugs. The past washed away with every beat of their hearts. Time pulsed differently in the aftermath. They stood together beneath the great open sky, sharing laughter and exhilaration, free from the shackles of shadow that had haunted them, but it was Jake's conviction that solidified their legacy. They would never forget that darkness, nor would they allow the shadows to sharpen their claws in the corners of their hearts again. As they walked toward the barn where sunlight spilled like liquid gold, Jake turned to Emily, filled with gratitude. We faced it together, Em. Together we'll always move forward. She smiled, and they made their way home, not just to the farm, but toward the future, hand in hand, buoyed by the strength of family and unyielding love. The sun hung high overhead, illuminating the path ahead, whispering promises of bright tomorrows. They were free, truly free, and the horrors of the night faded into memory, yielding to the day's glory. Now, before you go, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now and feed the algorithm to keep bringing you incredible content. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And hurry, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this finale. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.